Yah has made, and we shall rejoice, and we shall be glad in it. We have been an extremely blessed people by many wonders and many things and many issues. I don't know if you saw Sister Mary standing up today while she was worshiping. The Father has brought her back from death's bed to life. Nothing but the mercies of the Creator, blessed be He. I have been in prayer this week over matters. I pray that today is going to be a blessing to each and every one of you. One of the things that I learned growing up, I learned how to be respectful in another man's house. I learned how to respect where I was and who I was around. The Father's house is to be respected. It may be a building, but it's to be respected. Being the leader of this house, I demand respect. When you come into this house, you respect this house. It doesn't belong to me, it belongs to the Father. The Father gave it to us. He's made it possible for us to have a place to honor Him and to worship Him and bring people to a knowledge of understanding the necessary principles for eternal life. Though we have all knowledge, we have all understanding, we have not the Ruach. It's racket, sounding cymbals, tinkling brass. It's racket. And all of your getting, get an understanding. We should never have to function in a world and in a society today without being able to get an understanding. Getting knowledge and learning is very important to us as a people. And the Father is gracious to us and kind to us, loving to us. Therefore, we should love Him with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all that there is within us. We should love Him. I don't know what you expect. I don't know what you're looking for, but I expect eternal life. If eternal life is not the goal, let's close the doors, fold the tent, and let's go home. Let's eat, drink, and be merry. For tomorrow we shall all die. So, just a word to the house from me. We have guests in our house today that I wasn't necessarily expecting. I didn't put out a post or a bulletin because I wasn't totally sure that this is what the Father wanted to do. I only do what the Father wants to do. And sometimes you can move a little early. The timing may be off. I had to make sure the timing was right. But in 2007, when I came into the knowledge of what was then being touted around the country as the Hebrew roots, I hosted a Hebrew roots conference at the Sacramento Inn, and I had 3 speakers. I had Brad Scott, I had Bill Cloud, and I had a young man that was knowledgeable and very astute in the Hebraic language and things. His name was Simon Altaf. It was very difficult then to hear him because his dialect was still quite not as polished as it is now, spending time with us Westerners. But he brought me a book, and this book is called World War II, Unmasking the End Time Beast. And I have taught you all a lot of information from this particular piece of work. 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 9 years gone by since I have personally seen him face to face. And I'm so happy today to have him in our house to share with you insights on Torah, insights on the end times and the current events that are taking place in our world today and shaping the time of the coming of the Master. There are things that you will hear him say that might be different than what I express to you. I trust that you will be people of understanding. And remember that I teach you one thing. That is to do what? Eat the meat, throw out the bones. If we are a people who walk by the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, will tell your heart and mind what we need to grab a hold to for the now, the now, the now. My father used to say, and he taught me, he said, listen, grab a hold to what you grab a hold now, and peradventure the Spirit will enlighten you as we continue to walk. Biblical principle, here a little, there a little. Line upon line, precept upon precept. We grow and we learn to know. Rabbi Simon Altaf is a author, he's a writer, he is a Hakohen from the tribes of Yisrael. Remember that the Father dispersed Israel out of the land into all the four corners that there exist. And his people are everywhere. As we grow and learn who we are and start migrating back to who we are, we come to understand more and more truth. So, without any more from me today, I want to bring to you a young man that I met 9 years ago, Rabbi Simon Altaf. I don't know if you want to stand. You want to stand? Okay, let's bring this over then a little bit here. Remove the Torah scroll. We'll bring this over here, Lord, right here. More to the light. No, I got it.
Are you getting it?
Is it on?
Yes? Okay, great. Give me a second, please. Okay, so Shabbat Shalom to you again. I want to give, first of all, I want to thank Pastor Holman, who's invited me today to speak. And it wasn't planned, as he told you, which is true. It was completely unplanned. And here I am. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. This cup is not for my drinking water. This is something part and parcel of our heritage. So before I speak, I want to give a thanks and a bracha to the Most High, to the Elohim of Israel. Baruch Hashem. Father, I want to thank you that you brought me over here today to these people, to your people, that they may hear you and they may understand and they may obey your Torah that is forever. Baruch Hashem, may your name be forever and ever. Leolam Vaad. Amen. So as I was saying that I was very interested to hear Pastor Holman tell me that that you already know who you are as a people. And that was enlightening to me because most of the people out there don't know who they are. And they are still searching for their roots and their families and traditions and so on and so forth. As you know that the children of Israel that went out of the land, they went out as slaves to the king of Babylon. And then later, subsequently, our people ended up in Persia, which today, as you know, of Iran. Now, Iran is not Persia on its own. The Persian Empire was very vast, and it went all the way to Pakistan, today's modern Pakistan, which is ancient northern India. And we had trade routes in King Solomon's time and in King David's time with India, with spice trade, ivory trade. We had all of that going on. And you may or may not know that we had, in King Solomon's time, we had a zoo in Israel, and people who went out on ships went out to bring back exotic species from around the world in their ships back to Israel. So King Solomon was a collector of exotic animals as well. Not only could he speak to all the animals in their language, this is a gift that he had, he was also able to control demons as well. This is another thing that King Solomon had that many people are not aware of. So having said that, I mean, one of the things that I would ask, because I came in 2007 in Sacramento when I was hosted by the pastor, and I spoke about the end times. I didn't really give much about my testimony at that time because it wasn't quite relevant then. Maybe it's relevant now. Who I am, where I came from, he gave you a little bit about it. My family is from the sons of Aaron, and we are the Kohanim. We are alive and well today. Now, most people think that the Levitical priesthood is dead, is no longer relevant, but I'm going to tell you something different, that the Levitical priesthood is not only alive and living, but it will be used by the Elohim of Israel to bring back his people back to the Torah. So when people say to me, I'm in the Torah, I get excited and I want to know what does that mean to them. And so I ask them questions. So if I'm going to interact with you, don't be intimidated because you're not doing something. It may be something that you will do as you gradually get into more of the Torah. So this is not a quiz, but it's just to get to understand at which level of the Torah you're at, and perhaps you need to go further, perhaps there are things that you need to do. And so after I left with the Pastor Holman, it was at that point that I went and translated the Hebrew Bible back to English, and also in the process of translating it into French, into Urdu, into Hindi. All those projects are in the pipeline still. They have been for the last 8 years, and I'm not quite sure when they will complete. But our first and foremost remit is to get the French Torah from my translation, and also get the Urdu Torah that's going to affect perhaps 1.16 billion people in India and Pakistan speak or understand that language. So therefore it may help those people down there, and there are a lot of tribes of Yehudah and Benjamin and the sons of Joseph, the 10 tribes. They are also in Pakistan and in India and in Afghanistan, and those people also need to return back to the Torah. So therefore that translation is relevant for those people. I mean, I have my Hidden Truths of Break Scrolls here, the Tanakh edition. I also have the African Israel Siddur for daily prayers, and I have got some copies coming to the pastor which will be delivered to him probably after I leave through one of my emissaries. And so one of the questions is this, that as a Hebrew, and I will touch on the Pasha as well a little later as we go through this, because it will become relevant to you, is one of the things is this, that as a Hebrew, once you know who you are as a person, what do you do? One of the questions that I get asked by people is, I know now I'm a Hebrew, now what do I do? Where do I go? How do I live? Because all these are relevant questions. Because if you are a Hebrew, if you belong to the God of Israel, and at this point, I'm not going to look at your color or whether you're black, brown, white, doesn't matter, because if you come in and you accepted the God of Israel, then you have to accept his contracts. That's where the buck stops, with the contracts. And if you don't accept the contracts, then it's a waste of time, because then it's no good whether you call yourself Israel or not, because you have to be obedient to them. When God gave a testimony for Abraham, my forefather and your forefather, he said that he was obedient to the commandments, statutes, and judgments, and Torah had not yet been given to Kalal Yisrael, to the house of Israel on Mount Sinai. So Abraham had the Torah in an oral form, and he was taught in a written form by his forefathers, which I don't know if you know or not. Abraham was a student of Noah. He was a student of Shem and Ever. So he learned his Torah from them. When Christians tell you that Noah converted nobody in 120 years, that's actually a false statement, because Noah converted Abraham. He was his student, star student, I should say. So our faith is representative by Abraham's faith. We're not called by Noah's faith, we are called by Abraham's faith, because he set an exemplary model. And Noah was a right ruling man. But Abraham was the one that everything hinged on because he lived after the flood. So one of the questions that I ask the people is, do you know what this is? Do you know what you do when you get up in the morning? It's not a drinking cup. This is an al-natalat yadaim cup, a cup to wash your hands in the morning. So when you get up, when you go to bed at night, you fill this cup with water. And when you get up in the morning, the first thing you should be doing, whether you're a male or a female, you should be washing your hands 3 times with this cup. 1, 2, and 3. When you do that, you are removing the ruach ra, an evil spirit that's upon your hands, that connects to your hands at night when you're sleeping. Because when you're sleeping at night, your neshama, your soul, ascends up to the shamayim. And then when you wake up, before you wake up, it descends. Whilst it's descending, that's the time when the evil spirits attach onto the hands. So we understand that we must, in order to remove the evil spirit, we must wash our hands in the morning. Because if we don't, you then carry that evil spirit wherever you go, and that will affect you. That's a sakana, that's a dangerous spirit, and that you're not supposed to touch your hands, your fingers to your eyes, to your ears, any of your other orifices on other people, because that will transfer and that will internalize and that will cause disease. So if you go back to our history, you will find that we used cups like this with 2 handles and 1 handle made of clay. That's in Israel's history. So therefore, it's important that this is something that you must look to adopt in your lives for good health. Because it may be that if you don't do it, inadvertently you may get disease that you could avoid. You and your families predominantly. So this is why it's important. And then when you get up in the morning, what do? We thank the Elohim of Israel for our, for being alive. We do the Modeh petition, the prayer that says, to thank Him for giving me a new life in the morning. Because, any of us could just die when we're sleeping. And so He gave us a new day. As you sang about a new day today, you're living, you're alive on this Shabbat. Baruch Hashem, great. You have life. So you can give thanks to Him. So that is very important. We also, as part and parcel of our faith, we have 3 prayers a day. Now those 3 prayers came from our forefathers. They were not invented by the Ashkenazi Jews, as some people think. They were brought about by our forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those 3 forefathers. They are the ones who gave us our 3 prayers. The morning, the afternoon, and the evening prayers. So they are particular prayers that we do. We face Jerusalem to the east of the United States. When I was in England, east for me was southeast of England. Whereas here, east is, Jerusalem is east, over there is southeast, and from Pakistan, Jerusalem is west. So therefore, okay, great. Okay, that's great. So, as I was saying, so we do the Natalat Yadayim petition in the morning, basically when we do the washing of the cup. And when we wake up, as I was saying, when we wake up, we give thanks to the creator of the universe. There's only one creator. Everybody claims to have a God, but there's only one creator. So we do the Modiyani Lafanachai Melachai Vachayam Shachazarta Banishba Khablarba Muntecha, which is living an eternal king. I give you thanks for giving me new life. And also note that we when we pray in the morning, when we get off the bed, we are not perhaps in appropriate clothing, maybe we're not wearing our head covering, so we can do that particular prayer without a head covering. Notice I wear a head covering. Yeah, it's a modern looking hat. You know, I have all sorts of head coverings, as the pastor probably knows from the past. And I use all sorts of head coverings when I travel. So it's important when you come before the God of Israel, the Elohim of Israel, that when you take his name, that name that is set apart, you have your heads covered, both males and females. It's important. Now, I know that this is a learning curve. I'm not saying that you're committing a transgression, but it can amount to that. Beware. Because, you know, just as the pastor said, in his house, he requires respect. So does he. So if this is his house, then you should respect him the same way. As I would not enter this house because in an appropriate way, because that would mean that I'm disrespectful to him. You see me wearing the zitzits. This is not for decoration. This is commandment. All the males who call themselves Israelites, Numbers chapters 15 verse 38, you should be wearing your zitzits. And you should be wearing it to represent the name of the Most High, the Elohim of Israel. How are the nations supposed to know around you who you are if you just dress like them? How would somebody out there know? They wouldn't. They would have no idea, because they've dressed like them. This is why when we carry the name, we carry it upon ourselves as well, on our clothing. Now let me tell you something of interest. There are some people out there who understand wearing zitzits is a commandment. So what they do, they stick the zitzits on their belt loops. It's fine to do that, but it's actually not kosher. Why is it not kosher to do that? Because when we put the zitzits on, we put them on a talit katan, a small vest. It's a 4-corner vest. Now, technically, you're not supposed to wear zitzits, or you don't have to wear zitzits if you don't wear a 4-corner vest, like a 4-corner garment. Technically, you don't have to. But we particularly wear it and then put the zitzits on it because we want to do the mitzvah, the commandment. We want to do that commandment because that is what he requires from us. He requires for us to do the commandment, then you get the bracha, the benevolence, the increase that God's going to give you from doing the commandment. In other words, it's not a rote thing. It's not rote like, okay, I'll do it. You know, I don't even want to do it, but I'll do it. If you do it, a mitzvah, it then gives you many increases to you and anybody that's attached to you, your family, directly. So these are just some of the things that I think that are relevant. You know, how do we pray? What prayers do we do? Which way do we face? Which names are we permitted to use? Etc. I think these are things that you will learn as you go along in your life. It takes a lifetime to learn these things. You know, I don't expect you to get everything in a day. It won't. It'll take you time to get it. You know, teachers have to continuously teach, correct, and then eventually you get it. So this is where, you know, this is basically basic Torah. This is basic Torah, where how you pray. When I sit down to eat food, when I sit down to drink water, what do I do? What do I do a prayer? Do I say a bracha or do I not say a bracha? Because if I'm alive today, then it is by the hand of the God of Israel. It's by His hand that I'm alive. And I'll tell you why. I'm just going to get the water and I'll tell you a bracha on the water. Because this is important. Even water, we give thanks to the Eloha of Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sheh hakol niyeh b'davro. Benevolent are you, Yahweh Elohim, King of the universe, who has created by His word. Because all these things were created by His word. So we do the bracha before we drink the water as well. Myself, going back to 1997, I came to America back in 1997 based on a bet with a friend. I had a bet with a friend in England that I will make my next job, $50,000 job, in America. And I was in England. I was working for an investment bank in England, around about $35,000 salary. And my friend said, no way, you can't do it. I said, I will do it. He said, okay. He said, this is as far as you're going to go, and you're not going to go any further. I said, okay, we'll see. So we had a dollar bet. And I picked up the phone. I went home, picked up the phone, and I found straight New York. I got a name of a company, a recruitment company, and I found them. I said, I want a job in New York. They heard my phone, and in those days, I don't know what it was like down here, and they said, okay, we have a position, and we have a position in Credit Suisse First Boston Bank, and they will interview you. If you pass the interview, you can have the job. I said, okay, when's the interview? So they arranged the interview. I did the interview with these guys, and these guys said on their interview, we want this guy. This guy is the best guy we've interviewed. We want him. And so they were so keen to have me. I got the job, but I couldn't make it to America within the time that they needed me. They needed me within 6 weeks. My visa took a little longer. By the time I got here, that position was filled. So they were going to place me in the second towers in Namura International back in 1997. That didn't work out. And then I was placed somewhere else, and then I had to go back to England. So my friend lost the bet. I had a $52,000 job with an $8,000 raise occurring in 6 months, so $60,000 job. And I had to go back because my son my son was ill. I didn't know about his illness at the time, that he would be serious. I thought it was only typical, ear infections, chest infections, those kind of things. So I realized that my son had a terminal illness. When I came here, the day I landed, my wife's crying on the phone, oh, our son's got a disease, he's not going to be healed, he's going to die. So I said, okay, it's in God's hands. It's in His hands. Let him do what he needs to do. We do what we do as human beings. So I then told my manager, I said, I have to go back because my son is ill. So within 3 months of coming here, I was going back to England. 5 years later, that very building where I was supposed to work went down. 9/11 happened. I couldn't have guessed it. I wouldn't have known that 9/11 was going to occur. Nobody would have known about it. So when I went back in 1997, in 1998, when I was looking for who is the Creator and what does He require from us? Because I was a Muslim all my life, brought up as a Muslim, and then I had the voice, a voice that I thought was God's voice. He told me to follow Him. And then after that, I asked, what direction? He said, look at Moses. And so he said, go back to Moses. So I went back to Moses, and I found the Torah, and I found the God of Israel at that particular point in my life. Not the God of Islam, but the God of Israel. And so I decided to serve Him. And then I had to tell my family, and then that's basically where my life started from. And here I am today. But having said that, finding out who I am took time, took a few years to find out through my family line, etc., before I got there. So, point being is that sometimes it can take years to get to where you want to be. It's not a one-day thing. And same way is the events that occurred in 9/11 And before that time, I had been writing, I had started to write some books, and the pastor showed you the World War III book, which is now updated. There are 2 other subsequent volumes to that. One called World War III, Salvation of the Jews, one called The Second Exodus, Israel's Israel's return back to home, how it's going to happen, etc. So when I was writing this book, most people don't understand the mind of Muslim radicals. And so they ask the question, why do they want to kill us? What is it that we've done? Western people ask that question. And there are reasons for that, why they do that. One of the things that I've written in my books was that a terrorist group will rise towards the end of days. We don't know who's going to create it, but they're going to cause havoc in the Middle East. And they are going to try to destroy Saudi Arabia. They're going to try to overtake, kingdoms over there, countries over there, and that's going to be the prelude to the end. I had basically put that in the book before it even happened 10 years ago. And I also put in the book, before it happened also, that Western countries are going to be expelling Muslims who are radicals, and they're going to be revoking their visas. And when I put that in there, my editor at the time told me, don't put that in there, because it will make you sound like you're racist. But I said, that's what I've been shown. So my editor said, no, don't do it, just, because people will think that you're racist. And I wasn't a racist towards Muslims, because partly my family were Muslims. So anyway, so that was removed at the time. Later I had to put it back in again, because that did happen. Right in front of your eyes, France is now saying that they're going to expel Muslims who are radicals. Britain's already done it. They expelled Muslims who were radicals. They didn't let them come back when they went out of the country. So ISIS, known by many different names, ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever name you know them by, that's one of the groups that I wrote about. That they will come up, doesn't matter who created them, whether it's America creating it, Britain or whoever, it doesn't matter who's behind it. But their purpose will be that they will go out of control and they will start to be a real threat to everybody around themselves. And we noticed that in Paris, just a few days ago, whilst I was traveling actually, I was still traveling, and I heard that 129 plus people were killed and many, many other people were injured in Paris, which is kind of sad. So I wanted to actually tell you, how a little bit about that is, this is what's coming to pass today around us. Now, I know that many terms are used for radical Muslims. They're monsters, they're this, they're that, and the other. But I want to tell you that's actually not true. They're not monsters. They are just like you and me. They are people. They are driven by an ideology. Just as we are driven by the Torah to serve the Elohim of Israel, they are driven by their ideology. And you know what I say? I say that that's the ecosystem of God, the God of Israel. What is the ecosystem? There's evil, there's good. So, the creator of this universe, he is going to drive out idolatry. He hates idolatry in every nation. Now, we are not allowed to go around killing people. In the old days, in the ancient times, when we had the land, we were not permitted to allow an idolatrous house to stand. They had to go. But we can't do that today. We're in exile. We can't do that, otherwise they'll put you in the prison. So therefore, somebody else has to do it. So radicals are his ecosystem. And so in order to understand a radical Muslim's mindset, you have to understand the premise they are working from. They say that they worship the same Elohim of Israel. They say that. And I'm not going to doubt that's true, because they do accept Abraham, they accept Isaac, they accept every prophet of the Tanakh. They accept all of them. So I'm not going to say that they are lying, but they have a different ideology. In other words, their jihad-driven ideology is what they are taught on how to deal with what they believe to be non-Muslims. So they work on that premise. Therefore, when they go and shoot innocent, what's termed innocent people, they don't see them as innocent. they see them as guilty. How is it that a radical Muslim will see a bystander in the street as guilty? Is by the definition they understand and they are taught. For instance, you all very well understand what is sin and what is transgression. You know that if, for instance, you, committed theft, you would have committed a sin. You understand that. But you also understand that as a people, even us as a people, we are not wholly innocent. We stand guilty before a right ruling Elohim of transgressions and sins that our forefathers committed, then we committed. So we also are not innocent, if you think about it, because we have to come before Him in repentance to ask for forgiveness of sins, and then do the deeds and the actions to prove that we are not going to recommit those sins. So therefore, even us as a people of the Most High, I can't just turn and say, oh, we are innocent. Even we are not innocent. If we were innocent, we would be in the land of Israel. There'll be Alam Haba. There'll be the new world, the age to come. We'll be a restored people. We'll have everything functioning correctly. Nothing will be wrong in the world. But it isn't. It means that we failed our duty. Because we failed our duty, therefore we have all this turmoil around us. Hence why we have radicalism, and we have radicalism from the East, Muslims, who want to conquer the cities, kill the civilians, kill people that they feel that are not innocent. And I understand that mentality. Why? Because to them, when the West goes to bomb Muslim nations, they say that just as they are guilty of killing the innocent Muslims that they see as innocent, they say that we will also do the same likewise, because they're not innocent to us either. So this way, the ordinary bystanders who may have done nothing against Islam as such, they become victims of violence because of political issues, government politics. So government politics cause a lot of issues. And this is a primary problem. And we could make a lot of difference, because when one person stands in the gap and obeys the Torah, his obeying the Torah causes an effect all around him. In the city, in the country, it affects everybody positively, not negatively. Means that your Torah obedience will affect everybody else around you. So your right ruling, just way of living will affect people who live around you. That's why we were instructed to be a light to the nations. And if we are not, then everything around us will break down in chaos. So these are all symptomatic effects of, I would say, our disobedience. Because we were disobedient. If we were not disobedient, we wouldn't have all the chaos around us. But we do because of that. So therefore we have to work harder at obedience and learning obedience and how to walk in the commandments, statutes, and judgments and understand what we are here for. Therefore we can affect those people. And believe me, if you take the Torah to a Muslim, he's not going to reject it. But you have to take it. Who's going to take it? So that's the thing. Who's going to take the Torah to the Muslim radicals? Who's going to take it? That means you have to have your life in your hands to take the Torah to them, so that you're not a victim. So that's where I come in. And I take the Torah to the Muslims. Doesn't matter what they are, radicals, non-radicals, doesn't matter who they are. God has placed me in their midst, and I will do what is the right thing to do. So this is basically what we're going to see. We're going to see more and more of this violence in our streets. And by the way, I was a person who went to Wales in just before 7/7 suicide attacks in London. 3 months before that, I was in Wales telling them, a European conservative fellowship, I was telling them that suicide bombings are coming to Europe. And they were like looking aghast at my face. What's he talking about? Suicide bombings here? We're going to have people dying with bomb exploding in the middle of the streets. Yeah. Yes, it's going to happen. 3 months later, we had 7/7. And now we have Paris. And by the way, to you as well, next is America in line. They're also coming to America too. So be vigilant and be aware. Because if you want to live, and if you want the protection of the Most High with you, then grab hold of the Torah. Grab hold of it so hard, don't let go, because that will protect you. That will protect your families. It will guide you. It will save your life. And if you don't, then you're just going to be like everybody else, in a vulnerable position. So with that, I want to take you through some more stuff, but before I do, I want to touch on the Parsha as well. The Parsha today, Vaishalach, the summary on that Parsha is this, that Yaakov, he returns to the Holy Land after a stay in Haran 20 years. He then sends emissaries. By the way, these emissaries weren't men, they were angels, malachim. He sends those to his brother Esav, hoping to have a reconciliation. But they come back and they report that his brother is on a war path with 400 men. Armed men, because he wanted to kill Yaakov. So then Yaakov has to prepare for war. He then prays. He then sends large gift to appease his brother, that he may not do what he's trying to do. And we notice that night, Jacob tells his family, he makes his family to cross the Yavuk river. He splits his family. And then it's that point that the angels revisit Esav, his brother, and they tell him that we are a mighty legion. We come to destroy you. Esav is so scared at that point, because the legion of angels is now at the side of Yaakov after he prays, that Esav changes his mind. He is no longer willing to lose his men and attack his brother. So he comes instead, now he comes for reconciliation instead of Yaakov doing it. And then we notice that they come and they embrace and they kiss each other. And then we notice that after that period in the Parsha, Yaakov goes to buy a plot near Shechem in Israel. And then we have the issue of the abduction and the rape of our sister Dinah. That issue occurs after that. We also see within this Parsha that Shimon and Levi, the two brothers, are incensed by this action. And they then go to avenge their sister. And they go and they eradicate, they go fight the whole town of men. They don't touch the women. We have a midrash that tells us that there were 100 men in the city, and they killed all those men with the sword. And after that, they bring their sister out, because the sister is held under ransom. Shechem wasn't letting Dinah go. He was holding her as ransom. So they free their sister. Dinah refuses to come back because she feels ashamed. What happened? She don't want to come back. And then Shimon, we're told in the Midrash that Shimon gave an oath to Dinah that he will take her as a wife, that she will have a husband. Because in the ancient times, and in the modern times in the East, it is shameful for a woman to be raped, because then she feels that nobody will marry her. And so she feels that her life is finished. I don't know if you watch Bollywood movies. If you ever see them, you'll see that women tend to commit suicide after they are raped, because they feel that their life is worthless after that. Nobody will accept them. People will hate them. People will call them names. Especially in the East, this is very prevalent. It happens over there. So we see that in this Parsha, we have Yaakov's daughter Dinah, who goes through this issue, and then she is rescued by the two brothers. We also see that Rachel, who is the wife of Yaakov, beloved wife, she dies giving birth to the second son, Benjamin. And he is buried in a roadside grave. She is buried in a roadside grave near Bethlehem. And Reuben loses the birthright because he interferes with his father's marital life. By the way, within the Parsha, it almost appears like, when the Torah does the reading, it appears like it says that he put his couch in the tent of the stepmom Leah. By the way, he did not have any relations with her. So one of the incorrect meanings that people take from this is that he had some kind of marital relations with her or some kind of indecent relations. That is not the way it was. When the Torah writes like that, when the writer Moses wrote that, what he was trying to say, which we understand from the oral Torah, is that he actually was trying to order his father's life, the timetable for his father. He was trying to order it that when he would go to see Leah, when he would go to see the other wives that he had, that's what that text means, that he tried to order his dad. And so for that he loses his birthright. And we see that Yaakov arrives in Hebron to his father Yitzhak, Isaac, and then he later dies at age 180. And we also see that Rebecca, his wife, has passed away before Jacob's arrival. Then our Parsha concludes with Esau's wives, children and grandchildren, and the family histories of the Mount of Seir, basically Esau's family, and how they are settled, and how the list of 8 kings who will rule Edom, etc., etc. So we can look at that in small chunks and try to get a bit of understanding what went on. Because we understand that Esau, Edom, is the arch enemy of Israel. We understand that. That has never changed. The question is, who is Esau today? And so that's something that is on debate. Who is Esau today? So we notice at first, we read in the Torah, it says, and Jacob sent messengers, angels before him to Esau, his brother, in Bereshith 32, verses 4. So the Hebrew word that's used there, malachim, means, in the English translation it says messengers, is actually angels, basically a divine messenger. And from this we understand that this wasn't just human messengers, these were angels that were guiding Yaakov. I don't know if you know that each person, each individual member of the tribes of Israel carry 2 angels. You all have 2 angels allotted to you, to your right and to your left. They record everything you do. So this is why Jacob had his angels, which he used. And we are told that Jacob was greatly afraid and he was distressed. Bereshith 32:8. He was afraid that he might be killed and distressed that he might kill. And it says that if Esau comes to one camp and smite it, then the camp which is left shall escape. Bereshith 32:9. Now, I see in this some history, not just with our forefather Jacob, but also later. If you think about it, when we were put in exile, and many of you people, the tribes of Israel, predominantly tribe of Israel that came over here, by the way, was Yehudah and Benjamin. These are the 2 tribes that came over here, were brought here. Now, I'm going to tell you some real true history. I have one of my students, a rabbi, in Mali right now, in Timbuktu. And Timbuktu has ancient history of our people living there from the Songhai Empire. And I just received pictures on my phone from him, sending pictures of manuscripts written in Arabic and the local dialects of the Songhai Empire and the people who follow those manuscripts are Hebrews. Now, by the way, most of those people were converted forcefully. Some of them were forcefully converted into Islam, and they became clerics, and they became wise men, and they became advisors to Muslims. So these are the kind of people that my student over there was sitting between, and so they showed him the manuscripts. They talked about their history, how they came from Israel, how they established over there, what happened later, and so on and so forth. This is true history right in front of our eyes. And we, we have a person there who can verify everything for us. As I've spoken about the Songhai Empire, the Mali Empire, how these empires were built by ancient Hebrew people of our tribes. And then what happened later, Muslims came, and then some of them were forced to convert, or they had to die. So they were forcefully converted. And in order to save their lives, by the way, the Torah commands us to preserve life. So if somebody is forcefully converted, you're actually allowed to convert just for the sake of saving your life. Afterwards, you can renounce it. That's a halakha. According to our halakha, we're allowed to do that. So these people, what they did according to halakha, they converted, they changed their names to mix in with the other names, but later, as time developed, they lost their heritage somewhat. The reason why, because we have the prophecies in the prophet Jeremiah telling us that we will lose our heritage. And so that prophecy had to come true some way. This is how most of you lost your heritage, lost who you were as a people. But now you're finding out who you are as a people. So you've got to go back to your heritage, back to your Torah, back to everything that you knew was true. So this is what we find, this parsha, what I find here is it says that Jacob split up his family into two camps. So he wanted to save his family. I see the same thing. The Elohim of Yisrael split us and put us in the north, south, east, west. Why? So that we couldn't be found and killed by everybody out there. In other words, the Goyim, the Gentiles, if Satan had it, it would kill all of us because we represented the name of the Most High. So he would try to kill all of us, but by the protection of the Most High, he mingled us in the nations so that some of us couldn't be found. So you couldn't just pinpoint and say, oh, he's an Israelite, she's an Israelite. You couldn't do that because we were mixed into nations and put into places. This is how our lives were saved, by hiding us. So God hid us. And now the time has come that God is restoring us all back to Himself, to the tribes and to the customs. And by the way, each one of us had customs too. Did you know that we all had customs of our tribes? Each tribe had a particular custom that they did. And that's another discussion, but to give you a brief of what my tribe did, the tribe of the Kohanim, the Levites, what they did was, back in India, Pakistan, when a son was born, if you note, the Torah commands us to bring an offering to the temple or to the tabernacle, whatever time period in the past we had, whether a tabernacle or a temple, we were to bring an offering. If you gave birth to a daughter, you would bring certain kind of offerings. If you gave birth to a son, you bring certain kind of offerings. So a lamb was commanded for a son. My father had a custom in his family of giving that lamb as an offering to the Most High. And he didn't just give one, he gave two for each son that was born. So there was 4 of us, he gave 8 lambs. And one of the lambs that was given as exactly as in the temple times for that particular offering of a son. Second lamb that he gave was as a todah, as a thank you offering to the Most High. Because they understood that when a woman is pregnant and she gives birth to a male child or a female child, that she passes through death to life. Because she is at a real hard stage in pregnancy, and some women die. Many women in the East die from pregnancy. So, today's modern advances save women, but in the old days, a lot of women die. In modern times, many women die in the East. Today, if you read the report on India or Africa, you'll see that many women die from childbirth. So this is why this was a custom that our family did in the past. And having said that, there were several other customs that other tribes do too. But that's, like I said, is another discussion. So this is where I see with Jacob the same thing. He was greatly afraid and distressed, so he split his family. The wise move to split yourselves. So in case one side gets attacked, the other side is safe. I see it the same way. Most of you who came to America, you are being hung on the trees, killed in the streets. We didn't have that in India. Nobody hung us on the trees over there. The tribes of Yehuda weren't hung over there because the racism and the spirit of Satan was much higher over here. We call the evil incarnation. The evil incarnation of the Goyim here was a much higher, and is affecting people much greatly because, one, your transgressions came before you. Two, the people were ready to take vengeance because spiritually they knew who you were. Whereas in the East, we mingled. They couldn't tell us. One of the other things that's important to tell you is that the Kohanim were never put in slavery. We never went through slavery ourselves. None of the Kohanim did. That was the only tribe that escaped slavery. Every other tribe to some extent went through slavery. We didn't. Because we were still supposed to operate and teach our people. Because if we were in slaves, well, how would we look after the Torah scrolls? How would we teach anybody? So the Kohanim were permitted not to be in slavery. That was a benefit and an increase given to our families. So we see that here in the Pasha, we are also told in Bereshit 32:23, it says that he took his 2 wives and his 2 handmaids and his 11 sons. So we ask the question, where is Dinah in this situation? Dinah is missing. And what we find from the Midrash is that Dinah was placed in a chest, locked in, lest Esau set his eyes upon her. Because Esau wanted to take Dinah as a wife. So she was hid for that purpose. And Jacob, from this, the Midrash understands that Dinah fell into the hands of Shechem, which was a punishment, according to the Midrash opinions, upon Jacob because he withheld her, he hid her. Because one of the other reasons that the Midrash gives, perhaps that wouldn't have been the case. So God said to the Elohim of Yaakov said to him, according to the Midrash, you wouldn't give her in marriage to a circumcised person. Behold, she is now possessed by an uncircumcised one. You wouldn't give her in legitimate wedlock. Behold, she is now taken in illegitimate fashion. And so we see it says, and Yaakov remained alone, chapter 32:25, and it tells us, according to the Gemara, he remained for the sake of some small jars he had left behind. And from this we learn that the right ruling, their money is dearer than their body to the right ruling. Because the right ruling's possessions speak of the holiness of the Most High, which are redeemed and elevated. Talking about elevation, by the way, one of the things, I don't know if you understand it, kosher laws, kosher foods. Why we don't eat pork, why we don't eat shellfish, is because if you eat kosher, unkosher food, such as pork, shellfish, crabs, etc., it brings your spirituality down to the floor, almost zero. It leaves zero spirituality. When you eat kosher foods, like foods that are permitted, it raises your spirituality up. That's why one of the reasons why we watch our foods, what we eat. Sure. You want to ask a question? Yes, because God, the Most High commanded us in Leviticus 11 what foods we are supposed to be eating and what we are not. The reason being that He created everything, but there were certain foods like the unkosher variety that would lower our spirituality. So He wanted to elevate us as a people, as a chosen people. We're elevated. But when we practice what the Gentiles practice, we lose the elevation. We're no longer spiritual. So this is one of the reasons. And we note that it tells us a man wrestled with him in Bereshith 32:25. According to the Midrash Rebbe, this was the prince, a malach of Esav, according to the Midrash. It embodies the spirit of Esav. And we notice that Jacob struggled with Esav's angel, the malach. It represents the physical suffering of our people throughout the exile. And is it any wonder that most of our people have suffered? Look around yourselves. How our people are suffering today in the exile. And this is what embodied it, because he wrestled with the malach all night, which tells us that night is darkness, it's symbolic, it's for suffering, it's for evil coming upon us. And so the only way we can float, if I can use the term float, stay up, is by the Torah, because that protects us. When we disregard the Torah and we take upon idolatries upon us, we are sure to sink. So we have to watch out what we do, who we worship, who we call God, and who we know, etc. Because there are many gods of the nations. So we have to be very careful of who we take as our creator. And so this is why we see that the malach was defeated by Yaakov, and his hip joint was dislocated. So according to the Midrash, the cruel tortures that were inflicted by the Romans at that time, in Mishnaic times, to eradicate the faith of Israel, not just Romans, the Greeks also did it before them, then the Romans did it. And now that you're in the nations are doing it. How? They're not doing it overtly, they're doing it covertly. So for instance, by giving you religious systems of the Goyim, or the Gentiles, you're taken away from your true origin, your true faith. So you're no longer, so they don't want you to be part of the house of Israel. That way they can covertly remove you. So beware. And so we notice that it says Esau ran toward him and embraced him, and he fell on his neck and kissed him, in Bereshith 33:4. From this we understand, from the Hebrew word Vayisheshehu, and he kissed him, is basically in the Torah is dotted on the top. I'm not sure if in the modern Hebrew it is or not, but in the old scrolls that we have is dotted, which basically implies that this was an exception to the rule. According to the Midrash, that this tells us that he did not intend to kiss him, but to bite him. But Yaakov's throat turned to marble and broke the evil one's teeth. So what was different about this kiss? The sages, they debate on this, and they say that those who say that implies that Esau did not kiss Yaakov with all his heart. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, in the 1st century, he said it is well known law that Esau hates Yaakov. Here the kiss was an exception in that he did kiss him with all his heart. So these are the difference of opinions. Now, one particular verse is interest to me here, might be interest to you as well, is the verses in Bereshith 33:37. says, and Yaakov prostrated himself to the ground 7 times until he came closer to his brother. And the maidservants and their children drew near and prostrated themselves, and Leah and her children drew near and prostrated themselves, and after them Joseph and Rachel drew near and prostrated themselves. From this we understand when Mordecai, if you remember Mordecai from the time of the Persian Empire and Esther, when he refused to bow to Haman, they said to him, "You are going to get us all killed. How dare you go against the decree of the king?" And then Mordecai said, "Ani Yahudi, I'm a Jew, I'm Jewish." They said to him, "Did not your forefathers," or the people who were around him, the Hebrew people, they said to him, "Did not our forefathers bow to his forefather?" In other words, Edomites. Then Mordecai replied, "I'm a descendant of Binyamin, who was in his mother's womb at that time. Just as my forefather did not bow, so too I shall not kneel nor bow." In other words, Binyamin, by the way, wasn't even born at that time. So he didn't bow. Technically, he was still in the mother's womb. And Binyamin was the person in whose territory the first temple was built. Partly, I would say about 70-80% of his territory, about 20% of Yehuda's territory is where the first temple was built. And so we notice that the Pasha continues. We are told that Yaakov arrived whole in the city of Shechem, whole in body, for he was healed of his limp. In other words, he had a limp when he fought with the angel, but by the time he got to the city, the Most High supernaturally healed him. Because also we are told, whole in the Torah, because he forgot nothing about the Torah or the learning, nothing of his, because he had really no Torah in the house of Lavan, because Lavan made him work all the time. So his Torah studies were not as rigorous as when he went there. Also note that when he went to Lavan, when his mother sent him, he was missing for 14 years. Do you know what he was doing those 14 years? He was 63 years old when he got the bracha from his father. Both him and his brother were 63 years of age. And he was missing for a whole 14 years before he arrived at his brother's, at his cousin's or family's home. He was immersed in the study of Torah. He studied Torah in the yeshiva for 14 years before he ended up there. That was his missing period. Now, Dinah, if you notice in Bereshit 34:25, it says, Shimon and Levi, Dinah's brothers. Note that she is not called the sister of the other brothers. Why is that? Why is she not called the sister of the other brothers? It's because these were the two that risked their lives to bring Dinah back from the enemy when he had abducted and enslaved her and threatened her that unless her father agrees, that he would do bad things to her and her family as well. This is why Dinah is referred to as Dinah is called sister to Shimon and Levi. We also see from Bereshit 34:25, it says, each man his sword. So the sages calculate from there that the younger of the two, the Levi, was exactly 13 years old at the time when he went. And the Torah refers to him as a man. So this is one of the sources that 13 is at the age where usually bar mitzvah is performed on boys. This is why. And it would seem from here that this would be antithesis. Shimon and Levi's act of going for revenge would be antithesis of the Torah, of the Dat, of the wisdom that they had. And even Yaakov, their father, denounced their deed as irrational, irresponsible, and of questionable legitimacy under Torah law. Yet, this is the event that the Torah chooses to teach us, the age of reason, maturity, responsibility, and commitment to the fulfillment of the mitzvah. In other words, when you bar mitzvah a child, that is the age the child is told, you're now responsible. You're now to do the commandments. These are your remit now. That's why. So the bar mitzvah also comes from the Torah, from this very act. And so Shimon and Levi, they respond to their dad, to the situation that prompted their action, did not allow them the luxury of rational consideration of his consequences. The integrity of Israel was at stake, and the brothers of Dinah could give no thought to their own person, not to the jeopardy of their physical lives, nor to the jeopardy of their spiritual selves by the violence and impropriety of their deed. So in the end, their instinctive reaction coming from the deepest place in their souls, deeper than reason, deeper than self-consideration, was validated. God condoned their deed and came to their assistance, because they defeated the whole city, not by physical strength, but by the Spirit of the Most High. So we are shown that sometimes things seem irrational by our thinking, but they may not be irrational by the way the heaven sees it. So therefore, for instance, things that are going on around us sometimes seem irrational as well, but they may not be. There's a purpose, and there's a rhyme and reason for those things to occur. And so I see in this that, just as if you remember that Pinchas, one of the Levite priests, if you remember, when Israel, part of Israel, they were conducting lewd behavior with the Jordanian or Moabites, the women of Jordan, at that point, Pinchas took a spear and went and killed both of the people that were involved in the act. And so again, one would say that, why did he do that? It seems irrational. But actually, it was very rational, considering that there was a plague upon Israel, and many people more would have been dead if he had not done that. So that brings me to the point of the Levites. What is the purpose of the Levites? The Kohanim, and not all Levites are Kohen, by the way, and not all, because Kohen are slightly different. We are Levites, but we're not all Kohanim. In other words, there are two types. There are Levites that cannot be Kohen, and there are Kohen that are both Kohen and Levite. The difference is Aaron's sons are called Kohanim. The others are called Levites. That's the difference. So whenever Israel was in a dire strait, the Kohen came to the rescue. The Most High raised up a Kohen to rescue Israel whenever they were in dire straits. Look back at history. When we had the issue with Dinah, our sister, a Levite brother, two brothers rose together, said, we're going to go rescue our sister. Whilst our father didn't want to do that, but the brothers did. And we are told that the Most High condoned the behavior. When we had the problem with Israel worshipping the golden calf and dancing around it and doing all sorts of lewd behavior, who stood up with swords in their hands to one side? When Moses came and called to Israel and said, everybody who is on my side, who is on the side of the Most High, stand to one side. All the Levites stood to one side because they were not part of that lewd behavior. And then they were instructed to strike their brothers down who were part of the lewd behavior to save Israel. So the Kohanim, the Levites, came to rescue. When we had Pinchas, he was a Levite. He came to rescue. When we had Bilam, who used his magic, then he used his diplomacy to bring Israel to a state of sin, then Bilam was dealt with by Pinchas. Do you know that Midrash tells us that Bilam had a fight with Pinchas? When Pinchas went to chase Bilam because it made Israel to transgress, Bilam started to fly with his magic. By the way, people could do that in ancient times. Magic was very real. And I can tell you this occurs in the East. In the ancient times, many Eastern people had real interesting magic where they could do things. But nowadays it's kind of lost art. Some people may still have some of that art in the East. In the West, it's a lost art. So we see that Balaam started to fly. And then what happened, then Phinehas used the name of the Most High, and he started to fly as well. And he caught Balaam in the air, brought him down to thrust him with the sword. But before he would do that, the Sanhedrin was standing there to conduct their business. They were asked, is this person guilty or is this person innocent, before he struck down. And the Sanhedrin said that this person was guilty because he had caused Israel to sin, so he was struck down by Phinehas. He was basically killed at that point. So we see that Phinehas was basically key person who was called the savior of Israel at that point. Why? Because he saved Israel from transgressing further and dying with the plague. And we notice as we go forward that in history, what do we have? We have another key prophet, the prophet Samuel. The prophet Samuel was a Levite as well. Remember, in his days, there were no kings, it was all judges. And when we had all these judges, people had to go to a judge to get instructions on how to live their lives. And so Samuel went from place to place instructing people how to obey the Torah. Another classic Levite. After Prophet Samuel, we move forward and we come to the Babylonian exile. Before the Babylonian exile, we had Jeremiah the prophet, another Levite, warning the people, don't do what you're doing. Don't transgress the commandments. Otherwise, you're going to go into exile. People didn't care. And so came the exile. We had Yeshayahu, Isaiah the prophet. We had Yechezkel, Ezekiel the prophet, another Levite, Hakohen. And he was used instrumentally. During the Babylonian captivity, he was taken as a young man with the prophet Daniel. Prophet Daniel was from the tribe of Yehudah. He was taken with him. And they were taken to Babylon, and they became important people in the king's palace. And by the way, King Ezekiel was, during the king's time, King Nebuchadnezzar's time, Ezekiel was a prophet at that time. He was an important prophet. One of the details in the Tanakh, the prophet Daniel, if you read in that, it talks about the 3 men that were going to be put in the fire. Did you know that before they were going to be put in the fire, they went to Ezekiel the prophet to ask? So anything that our people did, they went to a Kohen first. Is this for me to do or not to do? Should I do it? Is God going to help me? They'll ask him that. Is he going to help me or not? So when they went to Ezekiel, they were facing Nebuchadnezzar, mighty king, evil king, not a good man. He was a type of king who had some supernatural abilities given to him. He could command the birds. We are told that he could command the birds, and the birds wouldn't fly. He would command the horses not to bray, and they wouldn't speak. He had some kind of supernatural ability given to him by the Elohim of Israel. And so he rode a lion with a snake tied around his neck as a harness. And he was a midget of a king. And so he had all this power. And so he was about to kill these people, the 3 right ruling people, 3 men of Yehudah, princes. And they were not afraid of him because they served the Most High. And they said, before you put us to death, we want to see Ezekiel, our man. He said, yeah, go see him. Because he respected the prophet Daniel. So they went to see the prophet Ezekiel. They asked Ezekiel that we are to be put to death for not worshipping this statue, not bowing down before it. Basically, they saw that as worship. They said, should we bow down before it, should we not? And they said, will we die, will we live? Ezekiel the prophet said, I don't know. Let me go ask the Elohim of Israel, see what he says. He goes to Elohim of Israel and says, these men have come to me. What shall I tell them? Elohim of Israel says to Ezekiel, What do you want me to do? Save them? They've committed transgressions. All of you people committed transgressions. No, they're not going to be saved. First, the Elohim of Israel told that to Ezekiel. The prophet Ezekiel came back, spoke to the three men and said, it's a hopeless situation. You decide what you want to do. You don't want to bow? It's fine. You want to bow? It's fine. You decide for yourselves what you want to do. They said, we're not going to bow. We're going to stand because it's going to make all of us look bad. Even if we die, we're not going to bow. As soon as they go, the Elohim of Israel comes back to Ezekiel. Ezekiel starts to cry. The prophet Ezekiel's crying. He's crying that, why are you killing them? These are our people. These are our finest men. Why would you allow them to die? And so the Elohim of Israel says to Ezekiel, no, don't be silly. I'm not going to kill them. I'm going to save them. But I can't tell them that. Because if I tell them, then they already know. Then they're not doing something by their will. Then they'll just be saying, oh, we're just doing it for the sake of it, for motions. Let them do it for the right thing in their heart. If they do it for the right thing, then I will save them. So the Elohim of Israel, at the time they throw them into this fire, and the scriptures reads that they were thrown into the furnace. By the way, this furnace was not like a big furnace standing, out there. It was a pit in the ground. The pit was full of fire, and many of his officers died. And we notice that in this pit, God, the Most High, does a miracle. He raises up the pit, because you can't really see unless you go close, and you're going to die if you go too close. Many of the officers of the king had died doing that. So the Most High raises the pit up as a miracle within a miracle. And when the pit is raised up, everybody can see the three men in there. And they're not burning. They're alive. God sends a malach down, the malach of fire. You know who the malach of fire is? He is the one that cools the fire down. Malach Gabriel. He comes down. He rescues them. So we see that time after time, the Kohanim were used. The Maccabees' brothers, they were also from the tribe of Levi when they fought against the Greeks. So the Most High has used my clan in particular for that purpose. So hence why I'm here for you as well, to guide you, to tell you to turn back to the Torah fully, completely. Not 50%, not 60%, not 75%, 100%. Then you will reap the benefits. Your children will reap the benefits. Your children's children will reap the benefits. If the Most High restores us tomorrow, what excuse are you going to have? We didn't know Torah. Nobody told us. You will have no excuse. But your time starts today. From this moment I leave this place, your time starts. Back to the Torah. And then it's up to you, how you direct your lives. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the unfulfilled prophecies, because I think I may be running short on time. How much time do I have?
You're short on time.
I'm short, okay. So I'll wrap up then. So I'm going to wrap up and take any questions that you have at this point, and then I will hand the mic back over to the pastor. Thank you for listening. Any questions? Sure, go ahead, please.
Who are the children of Esau today?
There are many opinions who are the children of Esau today. Now, one thing we've got to understand is that one of the opinions is this, that the children of Esau is anybody today, the spirit of Esau is anybody today that wants to destroy true Israel. Anybody who wants to destroy true Israel is Esau. Now that kind of goes over the boundaries of color. Esau, by the way, was black as well. So it goes the boundaries of color. In other words, today Esau is a spirit of anyone who hates us, wants to destroy us. And I'll give you the opinions of the rabbis from the 19th century. They saw the Zionists as the children of Esau, because the Zionists wanted to establish a state, and they wanted to bring the kingdom of Elohim, so to speak, by force. And they tried that, and they failed. So when they were trying that, when they were doing that, the rabbis, same Ashkenazi rabbis that you see today, who call themselves Zionists, the same Ashkenazi rabbis back in the 19th century said that these people are the children of Esau, because their spirit is of Esau, They are Edomites, and they will not succeed. And of course, we know prophetically that they didn't succeed because 60 plus years Israel hasn't had peace. Because when the real children of Israel go back to Israel, we were told by our father Yaakov, this same Yaakov that we just read about, that people will come to bow before the children of Israel. They'll pay homage. Well, have we seen anybody go to pay homage to Israel, to the Ashkenazi today? I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the Muslims go pay homage. Muslims want to kill them. So Muslims haven't paid homage, who are the children of Abraham. They haven't paid homage. The real children of Israel predominantly still outside the land. So until that occurs, that prophecy remains unfulfilled from the Torah. Hence why I would have to concur with the opinion of the rabbis that those are the Edomites, the so-called Zionism of today. That is the spirit. By the way, Muslims are not Edomites. Muslims are the sons of Keturah, Abraham's wife, first wife, and they are the sons of Ishmael, who was half Egyptian, half Hebrew. So they don't fall into that category. The day the true Elohim of Israel reveals himself publicly again, which he hasn't done for over 3,000 years, the day he does that, you know who the first people are who are going to come to the faith? Do you know the first people? They're going to be Muslims. Ezekiel 38 tells us where the Elohim of Israel says that I will magnify my name and I will make myself known to them. They are the first people who are going to get rescued, after Israel, of course. So Israel will know who Israel is, and the Muslims will know who Israel is, and the Muslims will know who their Elohim is. So therefore, they'll be the first ones to be rescued out of the Goyim nations. Hence why none of that has occurred. So we're still waiting for that. So there are many Muslims today who are part of the tribes of Israel. And so all of those have to return by the will of the Most High. Whenever that happens, then we will know that the time of our restoration is right by. So thank you very much for listening.
Rabbi, take a minute and take an extra minute and
Yeah.
then shed some light on Obadiah.
Okay. Obadiah, right. Let me go to that.
And the only reason I do is because I ask you this is because Obadiah
Yeah.
is the prophet that speaks towards the demise of Edom.
Yes, he does. So I'm going to take you to Obadiah. I've written extensive commentary on Obadiah in the Hidden Truths Hebraic Scrolls, and I would encourage you to get a copy to read it from Amazon. Now we're told in here, the visions of Obadiah, thus says the Master, Adonai, Yud-Heh-Wah-Heh, concerning Edom, we have heard a rumor from Yahweh, an ambassador is sent among the nations. Arise and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made you small among the nations, you are greatly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you that dwell in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that says in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though you exalt yourself as the eagle, and though you set your nest amongst the stars, there will I bring you down, says Yahweh. From this, what we see, this is just in a small segment I'm reading of Obadiah. From this we see that the people of Edom today will be strong, they will be powerful, and they will have a lot of capital, money. So from this we also understand that it says, when it says that you who have set yourself in the stars, in other words, these people will have access to send spaceships and what have you and what not. You know, they will be part and parcel of that mixing with the Edomites and the Goyim, the Gentiles will have this mixing with sons of Japheth. So one of the questions that will bring me back is, who are the sons of Japheth and who are the sons of Edom? And how the mixing happened? Because nobody really asked me, well, how did the whites become, how did the black Esau become white, vice versa? So what happened during the Roman times, during the Roman period of our first temple, our people were the ones who were allies with Rome. they invited Rome to come down to Israel. When we were invaded by the Greeks, our forefathers wrote letters to Rome, and they said, send help. And so they invited them into the country. And then later we lost the country by our own hand to them. And what happened at that time was that there was a lot of mixing that happened. The sons of Japheth married into what we know as the Hebrews. And so you had this mixing. And if you know anything about mixing, by the third generation, if you're a black couple, and then you happen to marry a white woman, and then that child that's born is a mixed child, and that child marries another white woman, you get white, pure white. In other words, the heritage is lost. So what we understand is that during the Roman era, a lot of our people mixed. They mixed some with the Greeks, who were sons of Japheth, and they mixed with the Romans, who were also sons of Japheth. So what happened? The mixture then turned the color around to white. Hence why these people that are spoken about in Obadiah are no other in very people in this nation where you are. And I'm not saying that every American is an Edomite, because Americans are sons of Japheth, most Americans. There are others who are sons of native Indians and not Japheth. So we have a mixture here too. But if we're talking about people with power and money, and you know who I'm talking about, the bankers, the Rothschilds, and those kind of people that fund everything, that's what this is talking about. The Most High is saying that even though you are very powerful and you think you can reach the stars, literally, you think you can reach the stars literally, I'll still bring you down. So Zionism has tried its utmost effort to establish Israel and a so-called kingdom of Elohim on earth by force. Their idea is that we expel the Muslims, we kill everybody else around us, we take over the land, and we establish our kingdom. And that's it, that's the Alam Haba for them. But we know from history that the only people that have put a stop to that kingdom is the Muslims themselves. So this is why I said earlier that the radical Muslims are the ecosystem, the balance. In order to have good in the world, you must have evil as well. In order to know who's right and who's wrong, who's doing the right thing according to Torah and who is not, if you don't have evil, if it's only good, then how would we know? How would we know who's right, who's wrong? So therefore, this is what we see. Obadiah is here saying that when he speaks about the vision of Obadiah, thus says the Master Yahweh, we have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the nations. Arise and let us rise up against her in battle. This is a political and secular state of Israel today that does not worship Yahweh predominantly. Yahweh is going to gather the radical nations against that state to remove those people. And that is what we are seeing occur today in front of our eyes. So when we see, unfortunately, the way it's occurring, suicide bombings or shootings and stabbings, this is all part and parcel of their trying to usurp a state that does not belong to them. Therefore, this is the unfortunate or fortunate, whichever way you look at it, this is the result that people will die, both sides. But this war will conclude when the Muslim nations will go attack Israel, completely destroy it. Now, you and me both know that Israel, in other words, the piece of land, belongs to our forefathers. We know that. We understand that. But we also know that we are never commanded to take it over by force. The second Exodus is going to occur, which I write extensively in my book, the second World War III, the second Exodus. I write about it extensively, and I show you, what's what and what's going to happen, what we look for. Everything that we are looking for is in place now. For instance, a war with Iran, yet future, in place. A war with Syria, right in place. The destruction of Damascus is right in front of our eyes. So the nations are building up to that. And so we have this clash of the two civilizations. So this is what the prophet speaks about. He then says that they are not in large numbers. they're in small numbers, as the Muslims are in large numbers. So this couldn't apply to the Muslims, because if they were in large numbers, then one could say maybe it's the Muslims, but it's not. And it says, to us basically, we as a people are a small people, small in number, because we are not big. We don't have nations. We are, there's a group over here, there's a group over there, there's a group over there. These are the people of Israel that are clumped together in different nations, different cities. So we're a small people. And so we're not up against a big force, like many, many thousands, millions of people. We're up against a powerful enemy from the start of Jacob's days. And that powerful enemy is powerful in that it has money, it has wealth, it has everything under its power. But in spite of that, we are given assurances through the prophet Obadiah that we are going to be rescued completely and redeemed as well on top. So we are told, in here in verse 5, if thieves come to you, if robbers by night, how are you cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers come to you, would they not have some grapes? To which I footnoted that these people are into space programs, to build homes in space, and this is why the stars, because the Zionists have collaborated with the US to set up the space program. Now, I don't know how much you know about the rich people, the Zionists, that what they do behind the scenes. They don't tell anybody. These are secular people. These are not religious people. These are not religious Jews as most think. These are secularists. They want to bring a secularist kingdom. And so these people are extremely powerful. They are what you known as the bankers, the elitist families of the earth. But that's what their goal is. So what they do, their goal is to bring, use nations. So President Obama, for instance, is a puppet to them. They'll use him to, place armies in certain places of the world. President Obama's not doing it. He's just acting on somebody else's orders. So these are the kind of orders, this is how Great Britain, for instance, under the orders and authority of other people. So, however, we are also told in the prophecies that these nations, the US, the United Kingdom, and European nations, one day will be used for Israel, not against Israel, real Israel. They'll be used for them too. But now, they're kind of being used against them. And so we notice that it's told that their pride of their heart has deceived you. Pride brings a fall. Obadiah tells us that the pride of their heart has deceived them so much that the political Zionists think of ruling the world from Zion, hence why they have their nests are high, figurative and spiritually, basically both in the east and the west. So they dream of a one world kingdom to rule from Israel. They call it Zion, and so on and so forth. This is one of their dreams, which we are told through the prophet. And in verse 6 we are told, how are the things of Asaph searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? What the Most High is saying, that I will search everything out and bring it to light and judgment. And verse 7, it says, all the men of your confederacy have brought you even to the border, for men that were at shalom with you have deceived you and prevailed against you. They that eat your lechem, your bread, have laid a wound under you. There is none understanding in him. With this we understand that the Idumi, the Zionists, secularists, in collaboration with the Muslims, they have been deceived. Even after taking bribes to pass information of their nations to each other, they still don't get anywhere. For example, the Israeli government that spies and pays agents in Muslim lands and other Gentile lands to do their dirty work, even spy in America. Note, Jonathan Pollard was just recently released. He was a spy in America, spying for that. I think he was held for 30 years. He was released by President Obama quite recently, a few days ago, I believe. So we see that what we see is that the present government is a secular government in Israel. It's a Zionist government. It has no allegiance to Torah, although it kind of conveys messages that it does. It doesn't. A country that allows traits of same gender people has no allegiance to Torah. So we have all these, the unrighteous actions going on, which show us that these people are not in Torah, and they're doing what the worldly things that they do. So the prophet tells us that these people, they will try and establish this kind of order, but they will fail. Now, I don't know if you know that the Mossad, the Israeli Secret Service, has a hand in ISIS as well. So, don't think that they don't have no hand. In fact, one of the Palestinian terrorist organizations was created by them to, infiltrate not only Muslims, there were other terrorists in Israel. The Fatah, for instance, they were basically created so that they could bring information, and also it was a back and forth. In other words, every time the president of America, for instance, would say, let's have peace, let's have two-state solution, they will ask them to do some attacks. And then when they attacked, then Israeli government could say, no, we can't have peace with them. Look at them, they're attacking us. That was orchestrated by the Mossad, by the way. So this organization that was placed in Israel was by their hands originally, but what happened later, it went AWOL. In other words, it went out of their hands, it no longer functioned under them, it no longer listened to them. So it started by the Mossad. So a lot of the things we see, for instance, ISIS, is they had brand new weapons, brand new cars, Humvees, Jeeps, brand new, missile launchers and other things. Well, where did they get them from? It's a question, where does supposedly people that come from Great Britain, France, this, that, and the other countries, whether they suddenly acquire these, brand new Kalashnikovs, all these military armament, everything, is because at least minimum of 4 countries were involved. This country, Britain, France, Germany, these were involved in the creation of ISIS because they wanted to use ISIS to destabilize Syria because they hated Assad. They wanted Assad out. They wanted a Western-friendly government in. Now today, ISIS, by the way, has gone outside the jurisdiction of their handlers. They're no longer listening to them.
They've gone rogue.
Yes, they've gone rogue. So when you have, and I've said this in the past, that any organization that these people will put up, it will go rogue and it will go back to the Islamic principle of jihad, which is to them is an external jihad. Now, I'm not saying that all the Muslims will follow that. Not all the Muslims will follow that. But the ones that do, they will fight back. The same countries that will put them up, they will attack them. So what we see here in Obadiah is a breakdown of these things occurring in our day. And this is what's going to come to pass. If I can give you a summary of it. That's what's occurring. So it's all by the hands of the Most High. It is allowed to do that, that particular way. Yes, it's sad that, civilians die, unfortunately, and it's a war out there. So it's not something that we can control, but what we can do is we can definitely pray for our people that they get understanding and that they revert back to the Torah. We can do that. Other than that, we have no remit to go around converting people and telling them to follow me, and we have no remit in that. Our remit is to Israel only. And anybody else that comes, joins us, is welcome.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now, what you have gleaned is something that I was reading this week about the Rothschilds and the Bilderbergs. The Rothschilds and the Bilderbergs are very much in orchestrating the challenges of the world for the sake of their own personal gain and pitting countries against countries and creating the chaos that we have. One of the reasons I asked Rabbi to give us a brief overview on Obadiah is because as you hear, it gives you an altogether different perspective on who the Father's talking about when he talks about Edom. we are living in the, so it behooves us to be aware. We cannot exist in this world with our heads stuck in the sand like ostrich. And you cannot exist in this world having scriptural, historical, and scientific knowledge that connects us to the Father's Word. Realize that the Father's Word is spiritual, but the Father's Word is also something that provides us with historical connections and prophetic connections to real things that are taking place right before our eyes. And the Father has said to his people, what? It is for you to what? But in order to know, what do we have to do? We have to study. We have to study. And we have to study fact. I want you to understand something. It is important to study facts. And facts have to be proven. Okay? So we're not looking for what somebody said without the evidentiary proof of that. Okay? I've taught you by what? How many witnesses do we need? 2 or 3 witnesses. So we got to look for all the witnesses to prove the things that are true, so we don't get out on these little rabbit trails and get places and get out and start getting ideologies and theologies that don't match back to Torah. If Torah doesn't support it, we need to do the Johnny Cochran thing. If it don't fit, we must acquit. We got to move away from it, and we have to stay with those principles. I agree with the rabbi that says to you, and I've said this with you, that your and my sole protection in this world as we live in it now, our ability to be protected and survive the chaos, is only by the protection and the covering of the Most High. Therefore, when I share with you the ideas of embracing Torah to the nth degree of your ability to conceive it and to understand it, that's very important, because when all hell breaks loose, and it will, okay, what's going to save you and I and deliver us is the Ruach HaKodesh, the Father's Word. The Father's Word is Torah. All right? I want to thank the rabbi for coming and being with us today. Like I said, it's been 9 years since we've seen each other, and it's much different today than it was then. And he's traveling through the United States, sharing as he goes, and I want to thank him. He and I got a lot of talking to do. So I don't know when we're going to get that done, but he and I got a lot of talking to do. Well, I want to say to all of those of you who have been online today, we pray that you have been blessed and you've gained some information that you wouldn't have normally gotten. And I want to say to you, until next week, shalom.